So I just think if your team has a GM and you need pass rush help, if he doesn't figure it out in this one, you probably need to fire him. If your team doesn't need pass rush help, you probably should take one anyway, because that's just the type of caliber of players in this draft. The defensive end group or defensive line group overall in this 2025 draft class is probably one of the deepest yet. I know there's a lot of talk about running backs, but this D-line and edge group, man, is kind of insane. So in this video today, we're breaking down this edge group and giving my top 10 guys. I know you've probably seen 1,000,001 edge rusher rankings video, but I promise you, this is the most complete and accurate rankings that you're going to find on the internet. I promise you, if you find one better, I'll give you $1, but I promise you it's probably not. If you're new to the channel, my name is Aaron Duncan, and this is a Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk. On this channel, I do some draft content with film breakdowns as well, reacting to rankings and big boards of some of the big experts. I give my own opinions in videos just like this, but where my bread is butter is with the Carolina Panthers. So if you want to see more draft content, please consider subscribing to the channel, because this season, man, there's a lot of time between now and the draft, and things are moving along fast. So as things move on, I'm going to be here to try to give you some breakdowns on some underrated prospects, some news and updates, and the latest coming out of all of these discussions. But this edge group, like I mentioned, it is very deep. If your team needs pass rush help, no matter what shape, size, or whatever, it's a buffet of edge defenders in this group. You like big body guys? We got them. You want designated pass rushers? We got them. You want these lean guys? You got them. You want these undersized guys that use power and leverage to get home? There's all types of guys in this class. But of course, as we get through this list, make sure you guys watch all the way to the end. Let me know how you feel about them in the comments as we go. Let me know if I'm too high or too low on any of the guys, or if you just completely disagree, because I'm completely off kilter. But again, you're probably not going to find a better ranking video, a more accurate ranking video than this. So I welcome any kind of pushback. So let me know down below in the comments. So let's go ahead and get into my top 10. Number 10. Edge rusher is Jack Sawyer from the Ohio State University, comes in this list. This guy to me is a high floor, low ceiling type of player. And I say that because when I'm talking about edge rushers, you need a certain level of athleticism to be able to, I think, be a upper tier edge rusher, because you're going against bigger tackles, stronger tackles. So yes, power and stuff is important, but you also need to have twitch and get off and agility out there. And there's some limitations here for Jack Sawyer, but of course, a very, very experienced player coming out of college. I think what he did in the college football playoff really helped elevate him on my list, just showing him being able to get home, showing that relentlessness, that motor. Motor goes a long way for me, because yes, sometimes quarterbacks get rid of the ball very fast, but those certain plays where they have to hesitate just a second and you're going very hard with extra effort, you're able to turn the corner and beat these tackles out here. You can get home and get sacks just off that, and effort goes a long way for me, and Jack Sawyer has that. He has the size, strength, and the power you want to see out of a base 4'3" defensive end. Is going to put his hands in the dirt, but like I said, he lacks that athleticism and twitch. Typically times when you see him getting off the ball, you don't see a big, huge, explosive first step to really apply pressure to tackles. What you want to do is be able to get that fast get off and time up the snap and get that long, explosive first step. That way you get that tackle on their heels. They're trying to retreat, because nobody wants to get beat around the corner. Obviously, they're going to want to anchor and not get run through because of power. But the next thing as well is you have these guys lined up on the outside shoulder of these tackles. You want to be able to attack and threaten that outside shoulder with that get off. And I just think that Jack Sawyer doesn't always show that and flash that, and there's just something about it. Yes, you can improve your strength and your speed and stuff like that, but you see some other guys who naturally have that twitch in this class, and they can apply pressure to tackles when they're doing that, and that's just not Jack Sawyer. But again, a tough guy. He's able to set the edge. He'll be able to make plays again in the running game just because of the strength and the size that he has early on. And I think, like I said, he's going to elevate the floor of any room he's added to. I'm not sure exactly where he gets drafted, but I do have a mid-day 2 grade on this guy. I think just because after the experience and the things that I listed, he'll be able to be added to a room. And if you have a vision for this guy, he can help you out. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be able to help in the running game. He's going to be helping to help as a pass rusher as well at times. But I do think that there's some limitations to his ceiling, and that's why I have Jack Sawyer where he is. Number 9. Landon Jackson, edge rusher from the University of Arkansas. Now, the measurables here is what's most attractive for me, because I talked about this class. There's a lot of jumbo edge rushers. And when I say jumbo, there's height with long wingspans and arms. There's guys that are regular height, but they're oversized in terms of their weight, but they still have the ability to play the edge. Landon Jackson is one of those guys that has a huge frame with a big wingspan. This guy was 6'5" and a half, 273 pounds with 33 and 5/8 inch arms. Now, I thought that he was going to be a lot bigger than this on film. He just looks ridiculously larger than most humans. I think he was listed at what, 6'7" by their roster, or 6'6" like that or something like that on their roster. It was in the 280s, but he came to the Senior Bowl a little bit shorter and a lot lighter with arms that aren't as long as I thought they were. 33 is that benchmark, so you feel good about him meeting those minimum thresholds, but he just seems a lot longer on tape. I think he's one of those guys that has a wider wingspan than arms. When you have a wider wingspan but like slightly above average arms, when you look like you have large arms, that just means that you have broad shoulders. You know what I'm saying? Some guys, their shoulders aren't as broad and they have long arms. They're very, very lanky, but when you have broad shoulders with pretty long arms, you're going to have that huge wingspan. And I think that's what Landon Jackson brings to the table in terms of just measurements. He uses that length to his advantage when rushing. I think he has inside and outside versatility. I would picture that he can threaten the edge. He showed that in the Senior Bowl game. He struggled in practice being able to execute in the one-on-ones, but in the game, he really came alive, showing the length, the ability to be violent with those hands and use some hand swipes to turn the corner and get home on the quarterback. It was really a feeding frenzy for everybody on the defensive line in the Senior Bowl. But I like Landon Jackson because he's not a superb athlete as well, but with that frame and his get off that he has, he shows that he can still be a factor. And I'm glad he really had that appearance in the Senior Bowl in the game when the lights came on, because yes, one-on-ones are a thing, but they're really set up for the defense's advantages. So when a defense struggles in those drills because the lack of pass rush playing he might have shown at that time, it's a little bit concerning. But in the game, when the lights come on, for him to put it on tape that he can actually be a factor, I really like that for him. Now, what does he play? I think you could probably get away with playing him in a 4-3 base front, but I think his bread is going to be butter in an odd front, potentially standing up on early downs, being able to set the edge, use his length and strength to set the edge, and like I say, kind of give himself that natural advantage being outside of tackles, being a stand-up rusher. But I also think on third down, if you're worried about his lack of athleticism, you can put him head up with tackles, maybe a 4-eye if you want to, and let him work there. I think he'll be great as a looper in these aggressive type of stunt and twist system that the NFL now puts on tape there in these odd fronts. But I really like Landon Jackson overall as a prospect. That's why he falls where he is on my list. Number 8, Donovan Izaraku from Boston College. I know I probably butchered his last name, but I'm sure he'll be making a name for himself on the next level. The production for him was really the name of the game this year, as he finished second in the NCAA with 16 and a half sacks behind another guy on this list that we'll talk about a little bit later. I just love his pass rush bag. He has that cross chop, he has the spin, he has that ghost rush where he's able to dip. This guy doesn't have the prerequisite height that you may like, but the arm length is there with over 33-inch arms, meeting that threshold. So you love to see that, even though he's a smaller edge rusher. He does, like I said, lack that ideal size, and sometimes that shows up in the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. You saw sometimes he got engulfed by bigger defenders when he tried to rush, and he maybe mistimed his rush or didn't really execute it to the proper level that he kind of has consistently shown to do. But that just is going to happen with a guy like him. But regardless, when you have a guy with a bag this deep, you have to kind of pay attention there. Yes, you would love to see a little bit more power because he's flashing power on tape, but it kind of struggled, like I said, at that Senior Bowl with that power. But when you can rear a guy back on third down, at worst, make him a designated guy that can just get after the passer on third and passing downs as well, I think you really can't ignore, and the production is there. He shows up, has that nice, pretty decent bend that you want to see, and especially for a guy that low, why not use your leverage to be able to get around and turn those corners? But I think Donovan Izaraku is a guy that I think obviously will probably have to stand up as a rusher. You don't want to naturally put him as a 4-3 guy and just really put him a little bit too close. You want to get him widened out, standing up. That way, if he's facing the run, he already has that leverage advantage to be able to have the edge, and he can get out there and set the edge that way the best he can. I want to see him improve on anchoring, but I think just being at a weight room program, adding some mass to him and try not to sacrifice Obviously speed and his quickness is the kind of concern there, but at the same time, you have to be able to add that power to your bag, and it's gonna speed the power. I know he has shown those flashes there, but I have concerns about it translating. So I think that's just the next step for him, is adding strength, adding power, adding a little bit more bulk to his legs so he can anchor and hold up at the point of attack on an every down basis for him to become an every down rusher. But again, I just love the bag. Of course, the long arms there. Like I said, that cross chop is one of my favorite moves from him. He times it up well with that hop step and getting that arm down and just being able to get past. When I talked about earlier of putting pressure on the outside shoulder of tackles, this guy can do that. And he has a great motor. He has some juice to him. And you love to see the effort and the motor from those guys that just continue to work and get after it. And like I said, trying to bend that corner and run that hoop. Donovan Izaraku has a lot of things that are appealing if you need a guy that has that pass rush bag and you into that type of stuff. I know some people are into those technical guys. Some people saw Liatu Latu last year who had that bag and all the hand work, but it didn't really translate right away, like a guy like Jared Verse who had the power. But somebody's going to have a decent flavor for Donovan Izaraku. I personally have a round 3 grade on him, but I could see him going early day 2 just because there could be a run on pass rushers, and guys like him who have that type of production, it's kind of hard to ignore. Number 7, Shamar Stewart, defensive end / edge rusher from Texas A&M. This guy is one of the most polarizing prospects in this year's class, and again, one of these oversized edge rushers that we talked about. He's 6'5", 280 pounds is what it seems like, and the motor is really off the charts here. Just some freakish athleticism that you see at times, and he just seems to be overwhelming in terms of just his athleticism, the strength, the speed that you see, and just chasing down certain plays. Now, the production was borderline non-existent. Yes, the pressures were there, but in terms of just getting home, making sacks, it just wasn't there. And so this is going to test a lot of people's mettle, mainly me, because I have a hard time with traits over production. Yes, obviously, if you want to just go straight off production, Donovan Izaraku, Mike Green, these guys are just going to dominate my rankings. But when there's just no production at all from that standpoint, you really have to take a closer look and just see why. But also, is this something that you want to gamble on? Because we've seen a guy like a Lucas Van Ness that the Packers took that was more of a traits pick. I guess he was a backup at some point, but he hadn't really put it all together, and he hasn't really materialized thus far. Obviously, the book isn't written on him, but this is the caution that you have to take when you draft traits over production. But he is very, very raw, but it's hard to ignore the physical gifts. Again, we constantly see these guys that show the power, the motor, the violence that he can show at times, rarely not translate to the NFL. Obviously, you can't bully guys on the next level. You can, but it's still a lot of guys are bullies themselves at that next level. So you're just not going to be able to get away with just strictly doing that. But I think that somebody's going to see him as just that ball of clay and want to work with him. It's just weird the production hasn't been there. And like sometimes these Texas A&M players are a little bit awkward in terms of what they're asked to do. I'm not really sure what it is. Teams like Georgia and Texas A&M, they both have very unique systems. They rotate as well, so the production can be spotty for some of these players coming out, so you really have to kind of do your homework on them. But I just don't know, man. I don't know. It could, like I said, it could be the system, because a guy like Nick Scourton, who we'll talk about also on this list, he didn't have the exact same production that you would like to see as well, but he actually was able to do something. And obviously we saw him at prior stops show what he's worth there. But the flashes of strength and positive reps against the run are very, very attractive. I think early on he'll be a factor against the run just because his ability to set the edge, the strength, the length to be able to peek and shed those type of blockers on the edge. And he collapses the pocket as well with that power. It just makes you feel his presence. The pad level is something that needs to be worked on. Being 6'5", 280 and raw, pad level. It doesn't matter if you're He-Man and if you're going to get pushed around because you're playing too high. In the game of football, the low man is going to win, so it's all about being able to play with leverage when you need to, especially when you have a guy like this that could potentially be a 4-3 defensive end, could potentially be a guy that could play the 5 head up with tackles and odd fronts or stand up on the edge where you could potentially see some double teams or guys trying to reach you. You have to be able to play with leverage and be able to hold it down and hold your fort there, and the low man wins. It doesn't matter if you're getting pushed around because you can't play with your pad level lower. You turn into those guys like my saying that you look like Tarzan, but you play like Jane. No offense to anybody out there, but I'm just saying this is what you have to do to be able to put it together. The measurables and all that stuff is cool, and I'm sure he's going to test well. He had a dominant flashing over the 2 days that he participated at the Senior Bowl. It's a lot of audacity for a guy as raw as him to only participate in 2 days, but clearly somebody told him something as far as scouts or what his agent saw. But regardless, I'm going to be paying attention to what he can do in some of these combine drills when the combine comes around, because I just want to see the movement from him. Does he seem fluid? Does he seem clunky? Does he seem stiff in certain parts in the way he moves? Because you see the violence, like I said, in the athleticism that flashes on tape. But of course, in these drills, when there's t-shirt and shorts on, it doesn't carry as much weight as tape, but you still want to know and feel comfortable with his movement skills, especially when you're trying to project where he could fit into your system. Again, somebody will see the traits, they'll fall in love with them, and they'll probably add him, and he may end up being a great player, but you're gambling on traits. You'll get a good run defender early on, but you're still going to have to rear in that technique, try to help him out with that pad level, and just really kind of help him put a pass rush plan together, because sometimes it just seems like he goes out there and tries to just out muscle guys, and it's not even really true muscle. He's not really getting leverage, he's not really getting low. The hand placement isn't always there, and a chance to use that power. Just needs to get more consistency with most players, but he projects with those traits to be an impact guy if he can put it all together. Number 6, Nick Scourton, edge rusher from Texas A&M, another A&M edge rusher. This school was loaded this year. Between them and Ole Miss, they had a lot of dudes up front on this team. Nick Scourton is one of the heavier edge rushers in this class. Like I said, he's about 280 himself at 6'4", according to Texas A&M roster. But he's just similar to his running mate Shamar Stewart in that being one of those heavier, oversized edge rushers. And there's something that, like I said, about the A&M system that limits some of these guys' production, because what you saw at Purdue, he just looked like a different player. He looked like a little bit more juice. Some people are talking about his weight. I don't really see that on film. It's harder for me to project it. He actually looked bigger to me at Purdue, but I don't know. Going against maybe the SEC and stuff like that, he wanted to change his body composite or what, I don't know, but he just looked like he was moving better. He looked a little bit more juiced up at Purdue, a little bit more confident in what he was doing at Purdue, playing on the outside and standing up as an edge rusher. But regardless, the responsibilities of what he's supposed to do at A&M, it seemed like he executed them properly. I just have a problem with their system because it's hard to evaluate where these guys are, because it seems to neuter them in terms of being able to get production. But regardless, he's only 20 years old, man, and that's the beauty and most attractive part of a Nick Scourton. To have a body like that, to be only 20 years old, he shows a pretty sophisticated pass rush back, and I'm really excited for the hand usage there. And the guy at 280, when you see a guy that big hitting spin moves on the edges and it actually working, that's something special. And so for him to be there at 20 years old, the upside of what you like to see later, it is tempting and it's very attractive for me, in my opinion, because you see the violent hands at times, but you also see the power there with him, and you also see the finesse that he can bring to the table. Really mixes it up on a down by down basis to keep his opponents guessing. And when you keep those guys off balance, because you're big enough to be able to come with power at 280, but you're also nimble enough to get around that corner, but hit him with a spin to come back in the counter. I really love that. And this guy doesn't really predetermine what he's going to do. He does have it in his brain, but he also can read the tackles and how they're trying to attack him, and he's able to adjust on the fly there. I just love Nick Scourton's game, and I'm a big fan of his. Again, another guy with a high motor. You're going to see him chasing down run plays from the backside. You're going to see him playing the run where things are strung out to his side and making those tackles. You're going to see him making quick inside moves on tackles and penetrating and getting tackles for losses. I love this guy, man, as an edge stand-up guy in the 3-4. Like I said, another odd front type of guy. I'm not sure how you would probably project for a 4-3, but I think that he has the ability and shown the agility to be able to play on that edge and consistently set the edge, but also be able to get home when he needs to because of what he has in that pass rush back. I have an early day 2 grade on him. I expect him to go into the first round, maybe somewhere mid to later, but we'll see how people feel about him league wide. But I like Nick Scourton's game. Number 5, Michael Williams, edge rusher from the University of Georgia. another guy that's a difficult evaluation for me because you're talking about the traits over production. Now, I haven't been doing this long enough to really hang my hat on guys that I really liked that didn't have the production, but also put it together on the next level. So with more time and evaluation under my belt, I'll feel a lot more confident in projecting these guys and what they can do. But I am very, very concerned about Mikael Williams. But guys that are built like him, 6'5", 265, with arms long enough that he can slap himself on the calf muscle without bending over. These guys don't come around too often. At Georgia, like I said, one of those weird systems similar to A&M, but he played up and down the line of scrimmage through his course of 3 years at Georgia. He played the 3-tech, the 4-eye, he played on the edge. He played the wide 9 at UGA. A guy that has good length and punch to be able to set the edge, can do that peek and shed that you want to. It's just sometimes in the pass rush game, man, it's a little bit awkward. The get off, it's not like it's not explosive. He just seems to always be late to class in terms of when everybody's getting off. So he needs to just really, really work on zeroing in on the ball, getting a jump on the ball, just timing it up better and getting things cranked up. It takes a little bit while for a guy like him to get going. I like the first couple of steps that he's able to take. I don't think it's an issue, but I just think the timing of the get off is huge. And I think that's something that can be worked on, I guess, in terms of just reaction and stuff like that, but something that has to be improved if he ever wants to be a factor. Quarterbacks are getting the ball out in like 2.8 seconds in the NFL. Even a slight delay of reaction of 0.2 or 0.3 can completely take you out of a play if you're not able to zero down that to that room for error. Like, you don't have that much room for error in terms of the NFL, so you can't be late off the ball in terms of just get off. But he's super, super strong at the point of attack. Like I said, can definitely hold his ground and set the edge at any of the position, hold his gap in any of the positions that I listed that he lined up at. He can get himself into trouble as well. Another guy playing high, exposing his chest. He needs to be able to play with more leverage, because if you're playing too high, you're giving these offensive tackles, these guards, a lot of surface area. When you're built and as broad as this guy is, you're giving these offensive guys a lot of surface area to punch and hit on. And sometimes when he exposes that chest, one good shot to him and it's throwing him off his track. He's very stout and strongly built, but when you expose and give him a huge target, they give you one good punch to the chest, it can completely throw him off his rocker. So he's going to have to get down and play lower and attack half the men a lot more often. That way your chest is not exposed, and use that length that you have to your advantage. But again, not a ton of pass rush production. I think most of his production came against Texas. If he played Texas every week, this dude would be an all-pro as a rookie. But some games he just kind of disappears in terms of the pass rush standpoint. I don't know if he just checked out. I don't want to say that, but it just seems like, again, not having a plan. Yes, you can build your base off of using power, but you have to develop a bag off of that. I think from day one, he'll be able to help in the running game. I love the effort and the motor that he shows to run down plays. He's very, very physical and has violent hands. Like I said, from day one, you're going to get a formidable run defender that can set the edge on first and second down. I just have a hard time picking a guy super, super high that I may or may not have to remove from the field early on third downs, because I'm not sure what the pass rush looks like. He does have a speed to power and can bull rush at times, but you want to see him develop a little bit more out of that. You don't want it to be that muddy, but at best, so like I said, using the speed to power, he needs to develop a little bit more of a bag. But I just think that hopefully things will translate a little bit better. I know I've heard the Daniil Hunter comps from Mikael Williams, so a guy who didn't produce much at the college level, but was able to turn it on there. And he also has the big muscled up strong guy that has long arms. It's going to take a special coach to really corral all the potential and the traits that he has, but the goods are there on paper. I like Mikael Williams' traits. I just have my reservations in terms of how things turn over and materialize and how fast he's able to develop. But you have to bet on traits sometimes, but I'm not sure if he ever becomes a high volume sack guy. But if you can kind of build on that pass rush repertoire as well, just develop it and use the traits a little bit more often, again, you can develop an every down player, because I think the run defense is already there. Some of the things that he was asked to do at Georgia, it easily translates to the NFL. So Mikael Williams is an interesting guy. I have a day 2 grade on him. If I want to gamble on traits, I would probably say a little bit more than that, but high day 2 for me. I definitely see him going within the top 20 picks for sure. Number 4, Princely Umanmielen edge rusher from Ole Miss. This guy has continuously gotten better through his college career. Started at Florida, ended up transferring to Ole Miss. Like I said, that defensive front that they had was ridiculous. Had a double-digit sack year with Ole Miss in that defense. He has the frame. He's a little bit slender, but he has super, super long arms. I think he was listed at like 250-something on rosters, but he came in at the Senior Bowl at 265 with over 33-inch arms. So definitely ideal size and length, and 265 will definitely play. I'm a big Princely believer, admittedly so. I know that the speed that he has, man, is just remarkable. It's what immediately sticks out. Seeing him in the Senior Bowl game just threaten the outside corner. This guy, he's the type of guy that he doesn't really only have speed, but if you can't stop his speed, he's going to continually go to it. He's not going to mix it up if he doesn't have to. He can mix it up, but he definitely won't because he has such long strides and an explosive get off. He doesn't have a false step in his get off, but once he gets going, man, those strides are so long for him to turn the corner. He showed pretty good bend, even though he gained about 10 to 12 pounds with the roster weight compared to the Senior Bowl. He had a little bit of issues with his spin move, keeping his footwork together, but I still think that he looked very, very good in the game action in the team drills at practice as well. The one-on-ones, he didn't flash as much as I would have loved to see from him, but I think as a gamer, when he could turn that corner, when you have a quarterback that's actually a target there and you actually know exactly where you're going to work to because of the drops, I think Princely is a guy that at worst early on he can be a designated pass rusher that help you get home, because that speed is going to be a lot for a lot of NFL tackles to be able to handle. He does show speed, the power. He has flashed a spin move on tape. He has that hand swipe and cross chop as well. I think he's got one of the guys that, again, he doesn't predetermine what he's going to do unless it's just speed. But if you get out there on that speed, he can also counter back inside. He has the agility to play off that outside foot, cross your face, and counter inside. He does a good job of reading the tackle's leverage as he goes through that rush. But again, if you can't stop that speed around the corner, he's going to continue to run the hoop until you do. All you have to do is watch that UGA game to see what he can do and wreck a game completely. He just straight dominated that game and used speed rush the whole time to turn the corner. Even as a big Princely fan, though, his drawbacks is the running game. Now, I just don't want to I wouldn't call him a liability. It's just he just doesn't seem interested in playing the run, right? Because he has some good flashes on tape of playing the run and stuff like that. You see it. You see him setting the edge. Sometimes not as sturdy every time setting the edge, but he definitely seems capable. He has the length to be able to get extension and use the hand placement to lock out and maintain the edge. Does get moved sometimes off the spot in terms of that, but you see him peeking and shedding very, very little, but he does flash the technique at times. Like I said, just seems disinterested in the run game more so than a liability. So you can put him out there and he develop, or you can have him as a designated pass rusher early on in the rotation. And as the years go on, just kind of get into his head to motivate him to be that every down player, to be able to get that on there. But I think if he puts any type of improvement in the running game on tape, he will be one of the most feared edge rushers. I think he's a double-digit consistent sack guy throughout his career. Does he become a 20 sack guy? Maybe not, but 10, 11, 12, 13 over the course of a career, he could be a very, very good player for them just because of that length and that speed. I think standing him up in the 3-4 is exactly what you need to do. Again, putting him outside in that 3-4, you naturally give him leverage. In a 4-3, putting your hands in the dirt, yeah, maybe you could do that, but if you want to make it easier on him early on to automatically give him that outside leverage when it terms of him trying to set the edge, putting him as a stand-up rusher there is probably what I would prefer to do for him. But again, somebody's going to fall in love with the speed, and regardless, he's going to be a guy that I have a early day 2 grade on. If he blows up the combine with the speed that I think he could show with some bend and still maintains that 265 weight, I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks into the back half of the first round just on a late night tip right there. But again, big Princely Uman Mielen fan right here, but I got him coming in here on this list. Number 3, Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall. Now, he has exploded into the draft scene in just terms of the buzz. He led the NCAA in sacks with 17, was an All-American. He plays with a level of intensity and effort every down that you really just can tell that he'll be successful on the NFL level at some capacity. Now, of course, these guys, he jumps off the tape. He's a very, very fun watch on tape, but his pass rush bag, man, pretty diversified. I got, again, the hand swipe. He has an outside spin that he'll fake inside and plant off that leg and show that. Outside spins are just so awkward to me at times, because typically you see these speed guys set guys up outside and spin inside, because when you do an outside spin, you have to go in, spin out, but bend right back in to get to the quarterback. He's flashed it a few times. Just look at what he did against Ohio State. You've probably seen that rep. He did it a few times at the Senior Bowl. He got stymied on it a few times at the Senior Bowl because he kind of telegraphed it. But again, the speed, the effort that he has he plays with heavy hands. He plays with violence to try to shed blocks. He's quick enough off the line. They can dive inside, slip some tackles, and shoot gaps to make tackles for a loss in the backfield. Mike Green is graded out very high on PFF in the pass rush metrics and run defense metrics. My concern of him, of course, is the size and the frame. Now, this guy did not meet the threshold marks in terms of arm length, less than 33-inch arms. That's not the be-all, end-all. But when it shows up on tape, that's when I have a concern and question, because yes, he does play with violence, but sometimes when he plays against bigger linemen that can get hands on him, the violence doesn't really translate because he can't get those guys off of him. So I think being able to play in a 4-3 is probably better for him, where he only has one gap responsibility. He does show the strength and ability to set the edge, so I have confidence in him there. He takes on pullers well in the run game too, but I think putting him in the 3-4 standing up would seem feasible because he weighs at about 253, but I think just the lack of length sometimes is hard for guys to be able to stack and shed and peak consistently. He does it all the time against tight ends and stuff that try to block him, so if you try to run block him with tight ends, he's going to defeat that every time. But again, once bigger linemen get him on him, they can throw him off his spot. I dropped a film breakdown showing the strengths and weaknesses of his. I'll link it up here so you guys can check it out, because I talked about the strengths, I talked about what he has in his bag, and I talked about some of the drawbacks on him. He's one of the hotter names. I think he could probably slip into the top 15. I have a day 2 grade on him currently, but I can't deny the tide of hype that is building up behind this guy after that Senior Bowl. We'll see how he tests at the combine and how he looks in the drills, if he even participates, because he did 2 days at the Senior Bowl and called it quits. But I do appreciate the motor, the quickness, just the ability to penetrate. We'll see what happens with him in terms of where he goes, and I think that'll be key for him. But at the worst, again, like some of these other guys, he's a designated pass rusher on third down that's going to give you some help in the running game. But if you're going to ask him to consistently take on blocks like odd fronts do and just kind of peek, stack, and shed, where you have to take on blocks with your arms and then shed them, I don't think that's the proper way for Mike Green to be successful. I think that he needs just his one gap responsibility, allow him to use that quickness to win, and I think you're going to get a very good pro in Mike Green. Number 2, James Pierce Jr., edge rusher out of the University of Tennessee. He seems to be one of the biggest victims of prospect fatigue, because just last summer, during the scouting coming into the year, he was projected to potentially be the number 1 overall draft pick, which seemed very ambitious, but at the same time, the way he ended 2023 was pretty crazy. And now you've seen him in the low 20s. Daniel Jeremiah dropped the mock draft where he didn't even go in the first round. Obviously, there's some buzz about some stuff off the field, but I don't know anything to substantiate that. I'm not going to talk about that, but in terms of just on tape and ability and what I project, James Pierce Jr., he's one of the best edge rushers in this class. He's explosive. He's lengthy. He has the high pressure numbers despite not having as many sacks this year with 7.5 sacks. He has some concerns about the strength of the point of attack when you're that guy that's that slim, 240 something pounds, but clearly the long arms, the slim waist tells you that he's a guy that can add more weight easily. I've seen the Brian Burns comps, so now maybe some people may have some reservations about taking him that high, but at the same time, Brian Burns is a Pro Bowl caliber defensive end. He just inked the contract for $30 million. His speed and length makes him a threat to a lot of the tackles that play in this league, and that's something to how James Pierce is. His first step off the line is ridiculous. His second step off the line is ridiculous. He times the snap and he has a great get off as well. I think he showed a decent amount of power this year that wasn't really, I guess, seen to be seen before, but the strength to power is something, speed to power is something that I'm glad he really showed. He also showed a lot more strength in the running game as well. being that thin, he's going to have some concerns about being swallowed up in the running game and that flash sometimes. I'm thinking to the college football playoff going against Ohio State. He was kind of pushed around just a little bit there in terms of the running game with those bigger offensive linemen. But James Pierce Jr. is a guy that you bet on him having that ability to be a guy that can consistently win and with speed and bend around the corner. And now he does win with the bend, but it's not as consistently. I know people talk about maybe the flexibility in the hips and ankles may not be there as much as you want because of the way he's built. I know some people talk about the proportions of his anatomy with him having long legs and limbs like that. It makes it a little bit different to sink your hips and get low. I'm not a biologist or whatever or a physician that can break that down in terms of what that really means. But what I see on tape is a guy that can bend around that corner and run that hoop when you need to, can get a little bit lower when you need him to. And that speed helps him get there as well to beat the offensive tackles to the spot. Like I said, his pressure numbers, his pass rush win rate was really off the charts this year, even though it doesn't really convert into sacks all the time. But there's a few times where he missed some sacks or some guys escaped out of the sacks and got rid of the ball. So I just think that James Pierce Jr. is a guy that's been overanalyzed. And if he does fall out of the first round to the end of the first round, he can end up going to the Eagles, and everybody's going to be like, how do we let these guys get away with this? But these guys just continue to make common sense moves. I think, like I said, of course, off the field stuff aside, this guy has the ability to be a top 15 pick for sure, in my opinion, and be one of the better edge rushers in this class. He's been doing it for a long time, being good in college, and I think it's just prospect fatigue and people overthinking it. Sometimes just good football players translate, man. You don't have to do all the math and the metrics and stuff like that to really figure out that this guy can get home to the quarterback. He's fast, he's long, he has the length and the frame. He'll be able to add more weight easily in being in an NFL program and just being able to eat a little bit more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to add on some weight to him to be an every down rusher consistently when you need him to. But I just think James Pierce Jr. is a guy that later on we're going to look at down the line about why he fell to where he might have done if this narrative holds up, and we're going to be pissed off. But James Pierce Jr. is a guy that I think is going to be an impact player on the NFL level, especially in terms of getting home at the pass rush position. And the number one edge rusher, to nobody's surprise, is going to be Abdul Carter from Penn State. Yes, many have him touted as the best player of the draft. I don't know if I go that far. I still have Travis Hunter as that top guy. But what he brings in terms of get off, the athleticism, the motor, the physicality, and upside, just because he's his first year being a full-time edge rusher, it is unmatched by most in this class. I mean, he started the season off slow, but really picked it up down the stretch, and it really helped his draft stock. And the playoffs, I think, just really put him to that conversation for that number one overall pick that you see there. I still think it's going to end up being a quarterback, but I just think what he was able to show in that playoff couple of games and stretch that Penn State had, and of course the Big Ten championship, allowed him to be pushed and flirting with these conversations in the first place. He has a motor that runs extremely hot, but it's like a controlled chaos, man. Almost like not really a bull in a china shop, but he continues to fight and work. Again, has that motor that continues to work. Like I talk about, guys that have the motor typically figure it out, but he just has the freakish athleticism to go along with it. Even at 6'3", 250 pounds, this guy flashes a lot more strength than you would expect. I still think that that's something he'll need to add on if he wants to be a full-time edge rusher. I know there's Micah Parsons comparisons out there. I'm not sure if I'm there yet in terms of just play strength and stuff like that, but the bend he's able to show is just weird. Almost like, when I mean weird, I mean like good weird, because it's very unusual to see from a human being to be able to do the type of things that he can do. And I just think the intensity that he plays with is just something that you want to build your defense around. And I know I've seen the rumors of him maybe going to the Browns. If Myles Garrett moves on, I think even if Myles Garrett stays, it could be a good option. I know quarterback is on the table for them, but I just think that Abdul Carter is a guy that he's going to play fierce and with the ferocity that is going to rub off and be infectious for his teammates. His first step and speed are pretty much devastating on tackles, and his closing speed, once he gets his eyes on the quarterback and gets them in their grasp, it is crazy to see. He just really doesn't let up, and he once he gets a hold of them, it's really over with. Some guys, they have some questionable finishes to their sacks. This guy isn't one of those guys. Once he gets that corner turn and he gets his eyes set on that quarterback, he's going to most likely get that guy down. He'll probably test out ridiculous like most Penn State athletes and defenders do. We saw the COVID times once upon a time, but I think even at the combine, just like we saw with Chop Robinson last year, this guy is going to test out even more freakishly than you think, and he's really just going to solidify himself as one of the best players in the draft if he hasn't done that already. But again, he's only 250 pounds right now. I'll be curious to see what he weighs in at the combine and how he moves with the extra weight if he decides to bulk up, if the scouts and the media and the consensus has told him that, hey, you're fine where you are. Just kind of curious to see what he measures in out as a guy like that. I don't think I see a generational talent that I think some people are getting to the length of, but I understand the Micah Parsons comps. He wear the number. He went to the school. Similar measurables from that standpoint. But he's definitely somebody you can get excited about. And if your team is lucky enough to draft Abdul Carter, you are going to be very, very happy with what he brings to the table. I'm excited about to see how he actually translates. But again, seeing him at the combine will be a sight to see. Just be excited about what kind of numbers he puts up there. But I'm super, super invested in to see what another Penn State guy like him, who's a freakish athlete, is able to put up. But there you have it, my top 10 edge rushers. You guys let me know down below in the comments, where did I mess up? Who did I leave off? Who deserves to be added on here? Who needs to be higher? Who am I sleeping on? I love all feedback because this is the draft season. Everybody gets emotional, has very, very strong opinions about mock drafts and rankings. So I'm sure you guys have a lot to say. I'm a big boy. Let me know down below in the comments. Just be ready to defend your position because I'm going to defend mine as well. So let me know how you guys feel. But again, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as we get on this draft journey and break down more positions and give rankings and film breakdowns as well. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.